welcome. I'm your host, Patricia Emerson, and this is Shelf Life, where each month I share some of the best in young adult literature for teens, teachers, and adults of all ages. This particular edition of Shelf Life features stories told in verse. Many of today's authors have written more than one book in this genre. Why poetry? Because poetry packs a punch. These selections certainly do. They say a lot with a little. On October 6th, 1998, 21-year-old Matthew Shepard was lured to a desolate field by two young men pretending to be gay, pretending to be his friends. There, outside the town of Laramie, Wyoming, these boys robbed and beat Matthew, tied him to a fence, and left him alone in the cold to die. 5 days later, author Leslie Newman spoke at the University of Wyoming's Gay Awareness Week. October morning is her response to Matthew's death, her picture of a town and of a nation stunned and grieving. In powerful verse, using various forms and voices, Newman captures this tragedy, its aftermath, and its lasting effect. She demands that we look with open eyes and hearts. The doctor. The doctor keeps himself cold and hard like the shiny silver stethoscope slung around his neck. The doctor keeps his emotions in line like the color-coded file folder stacked neatly on his desk. The doctor keeps bawling like a newborn every time he sees what's left of that boy. Sold, a novel in verse by Patricia McCormick, tells Lakshmi's story, a 13-year-old girl living in Nepal who is sold into slavery by her stepfather. Lakshmi expects to become a household servant. Instead, she joins many other young girls who spend their lives in forced prostitution, victims of a system that preys on their poverty and powerlessness. What disaster sounds like. When the night rain soaks the ground past the soaking point, when the earthen walls around the paddy melt away, when the rice plants are sucked out of the earth one by one and washed down the slope, there should be a sound, a noise announcing that something is terribly wrong. Instead, there is a ghostly hush that tells us we have lost everything. McCormick traveled to India and Nepal, researching organizations that help these young women escape. Sold recreates this harsh and haunting reality in its unforgettable character of Lakshmi. Sold. I'm wiping the makeup off my face when the dark-skinned girl comes in. What do you think you're doing? She says. I'm going home. Her tear-shaped eyes grow dark. There's a mistake, I tell her. I'm here to work as a maid for a rich lady. Is that what you were told? Then Mumtaz arrives at the door huffing, her mango face pink with anger. What do you think you're doing? She says. Leaving, I say. I'm going home. Mumtaz laughs. Home? She says. And how would you get there? I don't know. The novel Bull by David Eliot retells the Greek myth of the Minotaur, half human, half bull, in voices of different characters. Poseidon, god of the sea, Queen Persephone, the Minotaur's mother, King Minos, her husband, Daedalus, the kingdom's engineer, Asterion, the Minotaur himself, and his sister Ariadne. Poseidon, the snarky devil-may-care god, plays with mortals, expecting them to make bad choices, and they do. When Asterion, the Minotaur, is born, who has a taste for human flesh, is born, King Minos wants him killed, but his adoring mother, the queen, won't allow it. Engineer Daedalus designs a labyrinth to hold him captive, and the plot thickens. When gods and mortals interact, expect disaster. Here's a little bit of Poseidon's voice. When you play with the gods, you're playing fast and loose. Enough small talk. I've got a sea nymph to seduce. Sort of an arch character. Sorry. And Ariadne. My brother's in the labyrinth, wandering the obscene lengths of its cruelly twisted paths, his beautiful horned head bruised on the unforgiving stone, nothing, no hope to cling to. Only the darkness that wraps him like a straitjacket while Minos struts, a vulgar, puffed-up bird. Mother prefers to take refuge in madness. I don't blame her. I confess, there's danger in sanity. Daedalus. I was sitting down to dinner when I got the call. The king had summoned me to the royal hall. You will build for me a labyrinth, a complex and riddled maze. One entrance, no exits. You've got 100 days. Alan Wolfe's historical novel in verse, The Watch That Ends the Night, brings the ill-fated maiden voyage of the Titanic to life. With characters real and imagined, we travel aboard, learning what brought these passengers so widely different together. Knowing what happens only adds to the suspense as we are swept along by the characters' stories. Wolfe threads the voice of the iceberg waiting below the surface throughout the novel. All warnings are ignored by the proud men who have designed this unsinkable vessel. The iceberg. I am the ice. I've seen the sun arise for centuries, 100,000 dawns. The sun rose up before the humans came. The sun will rise long after they are gone. Man's fatal flaw is misplaced optimism. Through hubris, it refuses to understand that chaos is the ruling law of nature, while order is just a futile dream of man. Unite and you might dodge the coming doom, else ape and ice will be united soon. In the biography, Carver, A Life in Poems by Marilyn Nelson, the life of this brilliant yet humble African-American scientist and scholar, George Washington Carver, blossoms. Born a slave in 1864, Carver finds his escape in education, but his struggles are far from over. He uncovers secrets of the soil and seeds and becomes one of the world's foremost botanists. His mission? To lift people out of poverty. Clay. There is primal, almost mystical connection between humankind and clay, from the footed, bellied first receptacles to frescoed Renaissance cathedral walls. To Carver's eye, the muddy creek banks say, here, to be dug up, strained, and painted on, is loveliness the poorest can afford. Azures, ochres, scraps of discarded board are landscapes. Cabins undistinguished brown, bloom like slaves freed to struggle towards self-worth. Beauty is commonplace, as cheap as dirt. American Ace, another book by Nelson, explores what could happen when a family's dark secret is revealed. Connor, the high school-age narrator, helps his family come to terms with the past. His discoveries open doors to new understanding about identity. What really makes us who we are? DNA. A few days later, Dad got his results. 48% Iberian Peninsula, 24% Great Britain, 8% Ireland, 7% Benin, Togo, 6% Cameroon, Congo, 4% Europe West, 3% European Jewish. Well, I'll be damned, he said, shaking his head. That's 6 more peoples, not just 1 or 2. So ACE connects us to the larger world. Just imagine how all those people met. Marguerite Engel's the author of many books in verse, and this one paints a picture of her life caught between two cultures. This memoir, Enchanted Air. Her mother is Cuban and has left her island home to marry an American artist. During her early years, Marguerite and her sister Mad happily travel between Cuba and the United States, forging close bonds with this side of her family until Cuba becomes the enemy. Midair. The airplane to Cuba is nearly empty. Are we the only people still willing to travel in the direction of a country that has been called troublesome by TV newsmen? Later, her family travels around the world, but Cuba, where half of her heart lives, remains off limits. I've never had to live in a place where I would not be allowed to speak all my opinions openly. No wonder Abuelita always finds such flowery ways of saying ugly things in her carefully censored airmail letters. Right wing or left wing, tyrants always try to control communication. They always fail. Kwame Alexander, author of the award-winning crossover featuring twin basketball stars Jason and Joshua Bell, returns in this stunning prequel, Rebound. In it, readers discover the backstory for Chuck Bell, the twins' father, and their inspiration. You'll be surprised and inspired by Chuck's journey to basketball greatness. More practice. We play till the moon floats across the sky, away past the time the streetlights illuminate the court, till my legs are anchors in a sea of tired, but we stay long after playground swings stop swinging and the crickets stop singing, and even then, I want to play some more. Another, and the most recent of Kwame Alexander's novels, Solo, this time a collaboration with Mary Rand Hess, creates an unforgettable cast of characters with Blade Morrison at its center. Blade has it all: the money, the girl, a famous father, now infamous. His dad, the rock star Rutherford Morrison, has become a drug addict. He hopes for a comeback while Blade, trying to make his own way in the world of music, just wishes his dad would disappear. This novel takes us to Ghana on a journey of discovery for Blade. Music, song titles that Blade revises in his own personal style, shape this story, one for the mature teen reader that strikes the perfect note again and again. Poetry is all about word choice, the best words in the best order. I'm hoping that you'll choose to explore some of these choice words. There's never been a better time for poetry. See you again soon. Featured in this edition of Shelf Life are October Morning by Leslie Newman, Sold by Patricia McCormick, Bull by David Elliott, The Watch That Ends the Night by Alan Wolfe, Two by Marilyn Nelson, Carver, A Life in Poems, and American Ace, Enchanted Air by Margarita Engel, and Two by Kwame Alexander, Rebound, and Solo.